everybody. This is Megan.
And this is Steven.
And this is the Synchrony podcast, where we talk about transforming apostolic dating culture and ending loneliness in the church. And you have a mustache.
I do.
Steven recently tried on one of those like off weeks where he, I think like we had traveled or you were sick or something, and we like didn't make it. You didn't have to go to church, or you didn't get to go to church for a couple of services because you were like puking or something. You grew out your beard, and then as a joke shaved it back to just the mustache.
Yep.
And to my deep horror and chagrin, I liked it.
Yes.
And the reason why this is terrible is that Steven has never looked more like my actual father than he does.
For context, her dad has had the same mustache since he was in like high school.
Yeah, my dad has had his mustache since 1984, and he has shaved it one time in order to be a chaperone at camp where he was required to shave his facial hair. And my mother told him that if he did it again, she would leave him. And he has sought dispensation from our pastor. He would, if pastor asked him to shave, he'd do it tomorrow.
Oh yeah, he would.
But he told him, he's like, listen, pastor, my wife will kill me or leave me. If I could keep it, that'd be great.
Well, she's like, this is the man I married. I married the guy with the mustache.
Well, and his upper lip looks like a vampire. Like it's like it hasn't seen the sun in decades.
Yeah, literally decades.
Yeah, like half a century almost.
Yeah,
it's terrifying.
40s, probably 40 years.
Yeah. So anyway, so I'm uncomfortable with how cute Steven looks with his mustache, and so he has once again shaved his face back to a mustache.
I feel like we need to insert a photo of me and your dad next to each other.
I'll try to find that. I will say, like, I know that like it's like a trope that like you marry your father or you marry your mother, and
you've
like,
always made comments of like, oh wow, you guys walk similar and yada yada yada. But so I would shave my face and leave my mustache as a joke.
Right. I don't know what changed. All of a sudden it looked good. It didn't used to look good when you did that, like when we were younger. I don't know if you like grew into it. Like it had to come with a certain amount of salt and pepper on the sides or something.
I don't know. And I just got a haircut today, and I'm looking at the camera, and holy smokes, I have a lot of grays coming in.
I like it. Anyway, so this is probably going to be a pretty like narrative story driven episode. Before we do that though, just a question: how's the Discord been going?
Well, admittedly, I kind of dropped off the face of the earth for a little bit, and I'm sorry to those who have stayed dedicated. I appreciate you. You guys are amazing. But I've actually been working behind the scenes, in a plan to, I don't want to say re-implement, but basically I've been having people, people have given me inspiration to, create a more streamlined funnel process to get people into the Discord. Once you like click our link, it will take you to our Discord, and it'll be a lot more seamless of a process to sign up.
If you're hearing about the Discord for the first time, this is a online community specifically for men, married or single, not necessarily Synchrony clients, just a space for apostolic men to gather and, build each other up and talk about things they like and be a brotherly kind of unit in the online space.
Yeah.
So if you are listening to this and you're a lady and you're like, oh, that sounds cool. We don't have one of these yet.
Yep. Sorry. It's for guys only.
Yeah. Guys
married
only.
or single.
Mm-hmm.
So the Discord intro, like getting into the Discord, should be a lot more smooth for new people joining.
Mm-hmm.
And also the same like bot was created to also like help create events. And also if you want to ask specific people questions or create group questions, there's actually a bot in there now that you can actually walk through drop downs to
fancy.
to be able to reach out to specific people, and it's all private, so it's not like posted to the public. So we're trying to get more streamlined. And basically what happened is I jumped in and I tried doing too much on my own, and I had to learn how to ask for help. So here we are.
Yep. That's a theme.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's going well. I love that it's happening. I think it'll continue to evolve and it'll go through ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's providing our guys with a place to just go be themselves and be seen by other apostolic men and be encouraged.
Yes.
I think it's amazing.
Yeah. So I'm excited. We just got to get better about scheduling time for me to go out there and do it.
Yeah. Well, we might have more of that lately. So I guess we're going to do the update episode, Which
Yeah, actually, what's funny is pertinent. I'm talking about the Discord and why I dropped off the face of the flat Earth. Um,
Steven. Go listen to our episode from last week if you're worried about Steven's conspiracy theory problem. He's not actually a flat earther.
but I like poking the bee's
He
nest.
does believe that emergency cures any illness, but he's not a flat earther.
I do not. But this episode will actually bring context as to why that happened. So
Yeah. So let me just start this off by saying that I'm uncomfortable with this kind of episode because I feel like it's very focused on us. And I feel like, so like, if you don't want to hear about our life and you feel like your goal of listening to this is not to like hear much about us as people, you're interested in like the data and the matching, definitely go check out some other episodes. This one is going to be kind of focused on us.
yeah.
And our goal is not to like become like lifestyle podcasters who talk about ourselves all the time.
But there are people who are invested in like the behind the scenes of Synchrony.
Yeah.
And so we just want to be transparent with people.
And people who are praying for us and with us. And yeah, I think it just gives people a sense, again, like I'd rather overshare a little bit and people feel like they have an understanding of why we do what we do.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, we already overshare, but
Yeah.
we overshare about things that are not always about us, but now we're oversharing. Like we're going to intentionally overshare just to be transparent with people.
Yeah. I feel like we have to start this story a long time ago though. Like we kind of have to start with talking about some of our values.
Yeah.
And this is harkening back to the beginning of our marriage, harkening back to the early episodes of Synchrony, if you want to go back and listen to that.
When we were wee lads and lassies.
Oh my. He grows a mustache and he starts trying to talk like a Scotsman. I don't know that those two
Back
things
to my roots.
I don't know if those two things are correlated. Oh my word, I haven't seen you in a kilt with the mustache. I don't know if I could handle it. Do we believe in men wearing kilts? Is that
I'm sure that that'd be an interesting question for an apostolic church.
If you are attending the United Pentecostal Church of Scotland or an ALJC church in Scotland or have been there, and you can weigh in on whether or not Scotsmen wear kilts when they are apostolic.
They just have to wear underwear.
Yeah, for modesty's sake. Maybe just like extra long kilts.
Do they wear leggings? Like
Well, like if they're wearing the long socks and then the kilt, like everything's pretty much covered.
Just don't sit down and cross your legs.
If it is a kilt, it doesn't count as a apparel of women, right? Someone fill us in on this.
Yeah.
If you feel like wearing kilts is okay, let us know. Cultural sensitivity when it comes to dress and modesty standards is very complicated.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'd be interested to know how kilts fare with that. We're not talking about kilts though.
Yeah. Or modesty standards.
Yeah. So one of the values that you and I were aligned on when we got married very early that we I think we discovered this when we were dating each other, and it was for me it was a real drawing point, was our outlook on finances.
Yeah.
Both of us were very like debt phobic.
Averse.
Debt averse, that's a better way to say it. Felt really strongly about good financial stewardship and believed in this idea that it's better to sacrifice in the short term and live a little uncomfortably in order to do better financially in the long term.
If we only knew how uncomfortable we would live for the next 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we got married
on purpose, but still.
Yeah, we believed like, okay, we were going to set financial goals. We were big, Dave Ramsey listeners. If you've never heard of Dave Ramsey, worth checking out his work. We don't have to agree with everything he says or his whole outlook, but he's got good.
But what it does for people is what is really important.
And good common sense advice. And the advice that really resonated with us was it's better to give up some creature comforts in the short term in order to set yourself up for financial success in the long term.
Yes.
Right?
Another way of saying that is his motto that he says all the time is give like no one else. Live like no one else so that later you can live and give like no one else.
Right. So by saving money initially, by not getting into debt or by paying off debt quickly, you can save more money, generate more income and wealth, and then use that to bless other people is the idea. And that was a really core part of our shared values. When we got married, we weren't making a ton of money. I was working at a college as an admissions counselor, making no money.
Yeah.
You were working as a valet at that point.
Was it valet or Domino's?
You valet. I didn't date you during the Domino's phase.
Oh.
Yeah, you were valet and going to school.
That's right.
And so we didn't have much money going around.
Yeah.
Um,
Except for the random piles of cash that I would get like once a month on a crazy weekend of valet.
yeah. But so from very early, like we started out really not generating a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then even as I got into my career and we started, like our income started to go up a little bit, we started making choices that I think the people who loved us and cared about us
We're concerned.
questioned.
Yeah. They're like, oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
We chose to live in some really uncomfortable situations.
Yep.
We rented for the first, gosh, I guess 5 or 6 years of our marriage.
6 years, yeah.
6 years. And lived in a series of rentals. Our first
I guess
apartment
5
wasn't.
years, yeah.
Yeah. Our first apartment was fine. The
Yeah,
second,
that was probably the most normal of the ones we lived in.
yeah, it was a 1-1 in West Palm. The second house we moved into, we lovingly refer to as the crack den.
Yep. The good old crack den
There was no actual crack
that
in
we
the
know
den.
of. It might have been hidden in the wall somewhere, but
Yeah, it was the weirdest house, man. Like they had taken this like stilted house in Fort Myers or just outside of Fort Myers and had like it was clear it was as if someone had just gone to
yeah.
like the Habitat Restore.
Someone bought it with
Mhm.
plans to use. So a stilted home, for those who don't know, are like the ones that are raised above like areas that could flood.
Basically, it's like a story off the ground with nothing underneath it.
Yeah, so
it's just up
usually
on
it's just like people
stilts.
could park their cars underneath their house if they wanted to.
Right.
Usually it's just a slab
Right.
of concrete. This one, for whatever reason, they enclosed the whole bottom of it.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't AC'd except for where like the laundry room was and the staircase, but the it was just hodgepodge together. It looked on the outside, it looked very
I'll try to drop a picture. It was sketchy.
It was sketchy. And we on the outside it looked sketchy. On the inside it felt less sketchy.
I mean, we had to paint everything because the walls when we moved in were like camo.
There was literally a wall painted camo. It was
very
really
strange.
weird.
The whole thing was just strange. It was old. It was musty.
But it had a lot of room. It had a workshop for me to build my bee business. It was
Right.
it was cool.
Everyone in our lives were worried.
Well, you know, we actually got it because of the 1-1 actually on the outside.
We did. It had a 1-1 on the outside, and we had a friend that we thought who might need a place to stay, and
Yeah.
so we got that. It had a little. Honestly, that the 1-1 was sketchier than everything else. I think that the mold in that place probably affected her allergies so badly.
Probably. I don't know.
If you're listening to this, you know who you are. I love you. So we lived there, and then we eventually they stopped renting that, and we moved into another house in Fort Myers. It doesn't matter, except that we were specifically choosing to live in homes that were below our means.
Yeah.
We were looking for the cheapest possible rent in a
The
relatively
cheapest,
safe,
safest.
right,
Yeah.
in a relatively safe area. And we never lived anywhere super dangerous, but we didn't live anywhere super cushy.
I mean, some family members would probably consider it to be dangerous, and we're like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, we have faith.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we did that, and then obviously, like, you know, as a young married couple, we got we had our first child.
Yep.
And we wanted to move back up to where my family lived. And so we were looking to rent or buy. So we live in a college town, and so like the cheap, affordable rentals are kind of taken over by college students. So there really wasn't a lot that we could afford month to month renting wise. We were looking at buying, but we believed really strongly that we shouldn't buy anything unless we had the ability to pay it down really quickly.
Yeah.
Our goal was to be debt free, including our home eventually, and as fast as possible. So we weren't looking to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a house. We looked at buying land that we could put a trailer on or existing trailers at one point. We looked at some sketch places. I remember hiking around with Lily in like a baby
Dude, she
carrier.
was in a baby carrier. I'm surprised she didn't get ticks on her. Like it was
Yeah.
like we were literally crawling through like vines, looking through like land.
These like heavily wooded lots that we were going to clear and put a trailer on because that was the, you know, what we could do, or that we were going to clear and put like a camper on. Like we had, we were looking to do it as cheaply as possible.
Yeah.
And this was, I guess, where I can start to see like all of the theme of all of this is that God has been shaping this part of our story in ways that we could have never predicted.
Yeah.
One of the ways that he did that was by the house that we bought.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where I can see his hand looking back. At the time, I was like, what are we signing up for?
Well, looking back, I don't know if we would do it again.
I don't know if we would either.
Yeah.
But there's okay, let me give like a let me
I'm glad we did it.
yeah.
I wouldn't want to do it again, but
Let me give like a slight this is another actual moment where I'm going to give a little bit more history because I do think this might bless somebody. So if you believe in generational curses, I think you also have to believe in generational blessings,
yeah.
where the things that you sort of set into place in your family and the foundation that you give your family creates cascading blessings and benefits, you
Yeah.
know.
I don't think you have to believe in generational curses to believe in generational blessings.
No, it's true, but I'm saying if you believe in one, you got to like if you a
Oh,
lot of
okay.
people are like, "Oh, that's a
A
generational
lot of people look
curse."
at the negative and not the
Right, but
positive.
not the positive. So the place in Gainesville where we live now is a little township called Fairbanks. It's like on the outskirts of town.
It's not Alaska, by the way.
No. And it's this little neighborhood, basically, kind of just like outside of the city limits. And in the 60s, a bunch of people from the church that was here, the Pentecostal church here, bought land out here. And it wasn't like they were trying to build a commune. It's just that that's
Yeah,
where,
it was cheap land.
right, they were developing a neighborhood out here and that it seemed like a good place to buy.
And at the time, it wasn't far from the church either.
Right. One of the families that bought land out here were my great grandparents. So my
Yep.
Mimi and Papa. And they were a really fascinating couple because they, I'm going to cry talking about this. Oh man. They were sacrificial givers who prioritized the founding of the church here really highly. And so they had like come into the truth and had been looking for a church. There wasn't a church here. They were like hosting tent revivals and renting in a building. And my great grandfather mortgaged the home that they were living in and raising their children in order to have enough money to build the first apostolic church in Gainesville. And they asked him at some point down the road why he had done that. And what he said, which is like so emotional for me now, is he said, because I want a place for my grandchildren to go to church.
Which at the time was your mom.
She wasn't even born.
I know, but I'm saying
Yeah.
like that's your mom.
Yeah. So he raised my grandmother and my great aunt in the church, in the truth. My mother and her sister were raised in the truth. And I was blessed enough to be raised in the truth, all attending this church that, you know, my great grandfather had helped to build. And like my grandmother remembers as a small child, like helping him mix the mortar, like he physically laid the blocks with his hands.
That he also mortgaged his house to help
Right.
pay for that church.
And this family, you know, he was the only working member of this household. He worked as a bookkeeper, but he did not make a lot of money. They were raising their two children, their two biological children. They had lost their oldest daughter at 9 months old to scarlet fever. They were raising their two biological children and then four other children.
Yeah.
Who were the children of siblings who were basically dropped off at their house and left.
Yeah.
So they had 6 children in effectively a 2-bedroom house that had a note on it because they were building the church. And so my grandfather did not have a lot of money, but he was a sacrificial giver. My great grandmother was a sacrificial giver. That their entire lives were the church until the day they died. My grandmother's last church service, they had to bring in a recliner. This is my great grandmother. Her last church service, they had to bring in a recliner for her to lay down in because she was so determined to get to church, but her cancer had progressed so far that she couldn't sit upright for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And they brought in a recliner so that she could be in church. The last thing that happened in that church building was her funeral before we moved.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they were just committed to the work of the kingdom their whole lives, and they raised children who were committed to the work of the kingdom. And so anyway, part of their story was eventually God opened the door for them to purchase land and build a house. And my great grandfather purchased 7 acres out here. Now, how that happened?
Yeah, looking back, they didn't make enough money to
No.
for that to make sense.
And I asked my grandmother what had happened, and she said God had just provided these opportunities for him to work strategically as a bookkeeper for businessmen who became very successful in Gainesville during that period of time, and God had just blessed them. And so my great grandfather bought 7 acres of land.
Which 7 acres in the 50s out here is very
60s, yeah.
The 60s is very different than.
No, but he bought that land.
No, it was in the 50s because this house was our house that we lived in. It was built in 55.
Yeah, I guess so.
So it's probably in the 50s or 40s.
Something like, well, no, they built their house in the 60s out here. My great grandfather did because of when my grandmother was in high school. So, um, early
Okay.
60s.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, so they bought 7 acres out here, and over time, that was the property on which my grandmother and her husband built a home. They were able to do that because my great grandparents let them live with them and helped fund the
Yeah.
build of their house. They purchased another small house lot next door that my mother eventually moved into as a college student. It's where she and my father lived when they were newlyweds. I lived in that house while I was in graduate school when you and I got engaged.
Yeah.
That's the house that I moved from to go marry you.
Yeah.
Um, and and so there was this sort of cascading generational effect of that blessing. There were other families from the church that were living out here, and they
Yeah.
were all connected with each other and serving and supporting each other. One of those families was a single mother whose name was Beryl, Berryl, if you're listening and trying to figure out what word I'm saying,
Yeah.
but everyone just called her Burl or Burley.
Yeah. Burl McGraw.
Burl. At the time, she wasn't Burl McGraw. I
Yeah.
don't know
Sure.
what her name was at the time. She had been married and then abandoned by her husband with,
Okay.
I think, 2 or 3 young children. And she was a single mom making no money, and her mother had bought like a flat pack, what was called a Jim Walters house, kind of like a Sears and Roebuck.
Yeah, like a Sears and Roebuck catalog.
Yeah.
For those who know what that is, but for houses.
Yeah. So it would all show up kind of prefab, and they would piece it together. And so her mother had helped her build that house, and she had moved into it with her children. And later in life, I think when her children were maybe teenagers, or I'm not exactly sure when, she met a wonderful man named Howard, and they got married, and they lived in that house until their death. And they were pillar members of our church, close friends of our family. I called them Aunt Burl and Uncle Howard. And
your grandmother came over almost every day to do her hair.
Every Tuesday. So
Okay,
my
okay.
grandmother would do Aunt Burl's hair every Tuesday. This was in a time where like your hair had to be like beehived, and in the latter part of her life, Aunt Burl didn't have much hair.
Yeah.
So it took a lot of like finessing to get it to look full and like,
Yeah.
think elderly sister wavy beehivey type hairdo.
Yeah, sure.
The story about that is she asked Nana to do her hair for her first date with Howard. And Nana did her hair, and Howard told her that she looked beautiful. And after that, Nana was the only one who could do her hair.
Yeah.
Which I think is very cute.
Yeah, and also a what is that? Act of love. From Sharon.
Yeah,
or
definitely.
Sorry, from Nana.
Yeah, it was. My grandmother was much younger than Burl, and so as Burl aged, it was really a labor of love for her that she would come and just spend time with her and take her to lunch, and they had this beautiful relationship that lasted my whole life. But Burl and Howard lived in that house. They built an extension onto that house that my great grandfather helped them build.
Yeah.
And then that was the house that when we came back to Gainesville was available.
Yeah, we ended up finding out through friends or through Nana that the house was up for sale.
Yeah, and the reason it had just sort of sat in the estate. It was owned by her grandson. Burl had passed.
Grandson or nephew or something like that. Or
yeah, nephew maybe. It's complicated.
Yeah.
Aunt Burl had passed years before.
Yeah.
Uncle Howard had passed many years before her. And so it had been just kind of sitting vacant. The family used it from time to time.
Yeah, for like rentals for stuff for a couple people.
But it basically looked exactly the same as it had when she was living in it.
Yeah.
Nothing had really changed. And so this distant friend of the family, basically, all the family knew each other, agreed to sell it to us. And the Lord opened up the door. We bought the house right before the market spiked.
Yeah. It was so we ended up closing on it in early August of 2020.
Yeah.
And at the time, so this is going back to our value of like living below our means as much as possible. We just for transparency's sake, like we didn't make a lot of money, but the bank still qualified us for a $400,000 loan.
Yeah, which is insane.
Which is insane knowing how much we made at the time. I think collectively we maybe made like 70. Like it was very, very 60, 70, maybe. Yeah. We did not make a lot of money. And they qualified us for a $400,000 loan, which we're like, that's terrifying to even think about. And so we ended up buying this house. It was on like a third of an acre, 900
Yeah.
square foot, 3-2, built in the 50s. And it was like effectively from the 70s, according to like
Yeah, the
renovations.
interior was from the
Yeah,
1970s.
there was
Or
like 3 layers of carpet, like frog wallpaper,
scary
all this like weird
wallpaper.
stuff in there.
Aunt Bro loved
Yeah,
frogs.
she loved frogs.
Yeah.
And we bought the house for $67,000.
Yeah, which is insane.
Yeah.
So,
Which it needed a lot of work though.
right. So we knew buying it that we were not signing up for something easy. We had a 9-month-old at the time.
Yeah.
And we tried to live with my parents for
For a
a little
couple months,
while.
yeah.
Yeah. And it was just too many people in one house. I was so stressed out about stressing them out about the stress. I couldn't do it.
And it wasn't your parents that were like stressed.
No, they
It was
weren't.
us stressing about stressing them out.
We had a massive dog.
Oh
We
gosh,
had
yeah.
cats that we had to keep in a one bathroom to not mess with the other cat. It was just too much. We were just bursting at the seams. It felt really uncomfortable.
If we didn't have the animals, it probably would have been more sustainable.
Yeah. But so we ended up, my parents had a pull behind camper at the time.
Yeah.
So we put that in the driveway of the house and
It
moved
was like a
into it.
19-foot Jayco.
It is not it was not a glamorous camper.
No, and for camping for a couple people, it was nice to like get out of the sun,
Yeah.
to like take a quick shower and
Not
get back
meant
outside.
to be not meant to be lived in.
Let's just put it this way. You put a pack and play in the walking space, there's no more walking space.
Yeah.
There's only enough space to walk out the door.
Yeah.
It was that small.
Yeah. And we were living in like I look back at that time and thankfully like I kind of just didn't allow myself to think these thoughts, but I was terrified that if like Child Protective Services
Oh my
came,
gosh.
I
Yeah.
was because
Yeah.
the house itself was uninhabitable.
Yeah, we weren't living in it though.
We weren't living in it. It had
Yeah.
a flea infestation from
Yeah,
like the
that
feral
was,
cats. Ugh.
gosh, that was so bad.
It had a flea infestation. The bathrooms, like the wall, the light switches would halfway electrocute you because the wiring was so old. Like
That was terrifying.
it was terrifying. And we started remodeling it. So we basically gutted it down to nothing.
Yeah.
Opened up everything. We had to rewire everything. I mean, we had to take it down to the studs.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a big house, but it was a ton of work. And for a while, you were doing the remodel, and then you got a job.
Yeah, then I ended up getting a job. The Lord opened up a door at the University of Florida to work under like the Steve Jobs of the bee research world.
Yeah.
And I was really wanting to learn from him because of how much knowledge he had in the research.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, let's apply for it just to see. And I happened to get the job, which was insane.
Yeah, and it was like a tailor-made position for you, and it
Yeah.
taught you so much, I think, about teaching
Oh,
people.
yeah.
And like, I don't think that the podcast would have been as feasible had you not gone through that experience.
No, I think I'd been too nervous to like talk in public or have people look at me, and I don't know. That was such a cool opportunity for me to grow in a lot of different ways. It was an amazing opportunity to work there, and I really enjoyed it.
So to kind of fast forward, so we got the house into a state where it was livable.
Yeah.
It was not comfortable. It
Yeah,
was
it was renovated except for everything was renovated except for the kitchen.
And when I say everything was renovated, like we had to do it cheaply.
Yeah, so
'Cause
it
we
wasn't
were-
like glamorous renovations. It was
No.
like it wasn't landlord special, but it was
We
fine.
didn't put flooring in the house. So like we ripped up, this is just an example. We ripped up the carpet in the house and it had this like
I found out from Chuck that was the original wood flooring. That's actually flooring. It's not subfloor.
it's not subfloor, but it was like unfinished wood. I mean, it might have been finished at one point.
But it had been covered by carpet for so long
So
it looked unfinished.
we had to strip the glue off and sand
Strip
it down.
the glue and sand it down.
Yeah, and
It
it
was
had
bad.
massive gaps in it, and like there wasn't anything we could really do. Like we couldn't afford, we weren't going to pay for the flooring to cover it at the time because we didn't have that in the budget. So we just like painted it with this like outdoor decking paint. Steven hated it because it showed dirt like crazy, and there were like there was literally a part of the floor in one of the rooms where you could look through a hole in the floor into the crawl space. So it was livable, but it wasn't comfortable. It was the size of a Cracker Jack box,
Yeah.
right? And that remodel that we finished was finished a couple of weeks before our son was born in the back room.
Yeah, in the master bedroom, which was the largest part of the house,
Yeah.
is so yeah, I will let you explain that, how cool that was.
It actually was really cool. And like we did plan to have a home birth. I'm not going to go into that. But it was neat because the room where he was born was the room that my great grandfather had helped Uncle Howard build. And so there was this significance in my heart of it, of kind of like, again, just kind of like inhabiting the blessings of prior generations, right? It's
Yeah.
The Bible says a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children's children, right? And I felt like that's what we were living in. Like we were living in the blessings that my grandparents and great grandparents had stored up for their children and their children's children. So Fletcher was born, and during this time, I promise all this context matters for
Yeah.
Synchrony.
We're telling this for a reason.
We're going somewhere. Um, while I was pregnant with Fletcher, like right around the time that we found out we were pregnant, had also started doing daughter work ministry. So our church has, our main sort of campus in Gainesville, and then we had started this initiative to plant daughter works in neighboring cities. Our pastor is a huge church planter. For a while, he was the North American missions director
Yeah.
at headquarters for the UPCI. He just has a heart for church planting. He's been a church planter, just has a heart for home missions or whatever you want to call it. So that was a big push that our church was going through, and we signed up to help with planting the church in Lake City.
Which was like 45 to 50 minutes from us.
Yeah, it was a long way away, and we were
Yeah.
there at least once or twice a week. We were doing door knocking, we were doing special preview services, we were getting there hours early to set up stuff. It kind of dominated all of our ministerial work for a few years, and it
Yeah.
was a sacrifice.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Especially with a really young baby.
yeah,
And working around a baby's sleep schedule and feeding schedule, and like
right.
it was a lot.
And it was beautiful though. I mean, like we got to
Well,
watch.
in hindsight, we actually started doing that before Lily was born.
No, before Fletcher was born.
Sorry,
Lily
before
was,
Fletcher was born. I mean,
right. Lily. Well, I have pictures of Lily at the first opening service,
Yeah.
and she was like probably a little less than 2. Like she was little.
Yeah, she was pretty small.
And so and I was doing music. You were helping with all the sound and audio setup and like the tech side of it and the infrastructure. And we were just an extra set of hands. We worked with an amazing team of people that had kind of come from our home church, incredible pastors. Absolutely love the Haneys. And so it was this beautiful ministry opportunity, but it was requiring a lot of us. And we had our son, and I went into a pit of postpartum depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
And we just kind of went through, I guess you could just call it like a cascade of sacrificial seasons, kind of.
Yeah.
Like from the time that we really started to move up here and serve in the church until recently, a couple months ago, it just kind of felt like that was our mode, was like we were living very uncomfortably. We were living very, like, not poorly in the sense of like we were struggling for money, but there were definitely points where like we did not have the money to buy the things we wanted, and a couple of the things we probably needed had to get postponed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like not
we weren't like
not like
paycheck to
essential
paycheck.
needs, but like things that would make life a lot more comfortable.
Right.
But things that we were able to not. We had to choose not to buy it.
And it felt like we were treading water, because it would be like, oh, okay, we're saving some money again. We're going to do the rest of the house. And then it would be like, well, we have to put in a new air conditioner, or we have to buy a new car. For
context, God was blessing us throughout this whole time.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like we were just like scraping by and this is the way we were scraping by the whole time. God was blessing us financially, and we were putting it back into our house, and we were trying to update it, but then something would happen and we would have to we had to buy a new van,
right?
Because we had to buy a new van, a new to us van.
Yeah.
So it's not like we were not being blessed and God wasn't providing for us during this time.
God was keeping us. Yeah.
He was he definitely kept on showing his power during that time, but we were choosing to, like, things would come up where we would have to pay for things. And so all of like whatever surplus was happening or whatever things were happening were going back either into the house or into the family in some sort of way. We weren't like living frivolously.
No, we weren't traveling for fun, really.
No.
If we were, it was like a road trip to somewhere, within driving distance.
That we would go to an Airbnb an hour away just to like have a night to ourselves.
Yeah.
And then we would come back the next day.
Just to escape our house.
And it was a cheap Airbnb too.
Yeah.
Like we wouldn't live lavishly.
No. And like, I mean, all of my clothes still honestly are like secondhand. So in this season, when we were going back and forth to Lake City, and kind of like we were kind of just like trusting God. I remember saying at various points, like we would use the time in the car on the way there and the way back, which is like an hour. And our kids were small enough that they would fall asleep one way or the other. Right.
Yeah, it was a guaranteed way for the kids to take a nap, which was
Right.
really nice.
Yeah. Um, I remember just saying, like, I don't know why, but I believe that God is going to make this vision that we have for our future come to fruition. And we had all these, I don't want to get all like about what
Yeah,
we
we're
were
not going to get
dreaming,
into the
but
nitty gritty of the dream that we had of our like stuff, but
yeah, like it was basically like we wanted to be debt free entirely. We wanted our house paid off. We wanted to be able to start saving and blessing people. Like we wanted to be able to start being generous. We wanted to invest our money so that we could start seeing it return. We had dreams of doing things like having supplementary income from rentals or,
well,
you know,
I think we kind of have to touch on that a little bit because
mm,
that's a big core onto like how this is still
mhm.
the dream of our core values
Yeah.
that we had together that is still showing itself in a way we didn't expect.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe the cleanest way to tie this in is we talked about how one of our values was financial stewardship, right?
Hmm.
But not for the means of wealth. Like the
Yeah.
wealth for us was never the end goal. Our vision, our shared vision, had been from very early in our marriage. We want to be financially independent and generate wealth so that we can create ways to minister to people.
Yeah.
And specifically, we really were passionate about creating um, like places of respite and healing for people working in the ministry or serving in the church who were exhausted, right?
Yeah.
We were, I think,
So, for context of how that would come into fruition, we'll be very quick about it. Um, we had dreams about having land and
mm,
growing a food forest and being all crunchy and stuff like that. But really, the goal is to create an oasis on our
mm,
property to have little like small cabins, like fully furnished cabins that were
mm,
comfortable, and then create a way for ministry or couples that were either struggling or maybe ministers that were or missionaries that are on deputation
mm,
or evangelists that have just got done doing a full circuit of evangelizing, creating a space to have them come and stay
yeah,
and recharge and invest into themselves and into their families
yeah. I
and
think
create a space that say, hey, we have dinner on the table, you're more than welcome to come, no
right,
pressure, but also our property is pretty and beautiful enough for you to go and enjoy a quiet conversation with God,
right.
you know?
Or hey, come sit at our table and just we'll be a listening ear. I think like at the core, like we felt a burden for the weary,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, we wanted to really invest into people who were tired.
yeah, and you know, and there are lots of different ways that we had hoped to kind of see that manifest, and we didn't know how it was going to happen because it seemed so far away and so financially infeasible based on where we were. And it was funny because like looking back at that, like this passion for, you know, really seeing ministerial couples thrive, ministerial families thrive in
Yeah.
the church, healthy apostolic families. In my head, I think I was kind of aligning what we were doing with like this ministry of Priscilla and Aquila, right? Who are ministering in their own right, but what they were really doing was creating a space for Paul to come be himself
Yeah.
and to do something with his hands and to like reconnect with his friends and to feel energized. And that was really our heartbeat. I think it's still our heartbeat.
It still is. It's something
Yeah.
that we definitely want to do. But it's this is gonna sound carnal, but on purpose. Like we wanted to minister to the flesh of the people who have been giving so much of themselves. And by say flesh, I don't mean carnal flesh. I mean investing into the person,
The human.
the human
Yeah.
behind the person sacrificing.
Because we're not just spiritual beings. We're
No,
also physical
no.
and mental and emotional beings. And some of those things can get really pushed to the sidelines when you're
Yeah.
full throttle in ministry,
Yeah,
you
when
know?
there's a family dedicating their whole life to serving,
Mhm.
families get tired, kids get tired. They in a lot
Marriages get
marriages
harder.
get very difficult.
All the nuances of kind of those individual dreams aside, that was where we felt like we were heading and we didn't know where it was
Yeah.
going to go. And we were talking about it on these road trips to and from this daughter work that we were planting. We had to get up at like 6 in the morning to get there in time for Sunday morning service. So we're just like drinking coffee, trying to be awake. And, um, I just remember saying at one point, I don't know how God is going to do this, but I feel a peace that he's going to open the right doors for us.
Yeah.
And it was during that period of time, really around the time where things were probably, at least for me, the hardest mentally and emotionally.
Hmm.
Like I had gone through a very, very dark pit after Fletcher was born.
Yeah.
And kind of, the Lord had been helping me with that. I'd gotten good support. I was working with a therapist. I was starting to kind of unpack everything. At that point was when the idea of Synchrony kind of was born
Hmm.
on one of those car trips.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this, but to this day, I don't know what it was that, I mean, I think it was God, but I don't know if what triggered this idea in my mind that this could be a thing that we did, you know?
Yeah. I believe uh, a lot of our conversations are honestly how we have these conversations now on the podcast, because
Yeah.
we talked about wanting to do a podcast, but we didn't know what it would be about. And these conversations that you and I have on the
Hmm.
podcast, for those listening, is very much what our car ride conversations are like.
Yeah.
I mean, now they're a little bit more edited, but
Yeah. We have
I
kids
mean, me
and
being edited, Megan has to edit me out all the time.
yes.
Or I have to edit me out too.
Um, so that's where Synchrony started.
Yeah.
And then we embarked on the journey that was Synchrony. And it came with more sacrifice. And I'm not saying this to like toot our own horn or like make us sound like the best Christians ever. Cause like we weren't the best
No,
Christians ever
no.
during any of this. Like, you know,
We were trying, but
we
we
were
weren't
trying.
perfect.
And we had a lot of learning to do with Synchrony over the, it's been almost 3 years. It'll be 3 years in July since we officially started. Like our first consultation was in July. March or April was probably around when we started doing things like building the domain out and doing all of that.
Yeah,
So like
we ordered the domain, but didn't do anything with it until like,
it took us some time to get things
yeah,
together, but
to get the ball rolling and kind of doing research.
right. Um, but in that time, I mean, I think uh, for whatever reason, we just became kind of obsessed with the experience of people who were lonely. And I think it goes back to that idea of weariness and the Lord just giving us a burden for people who are quietly enduring and slowly being worn down. Like that kind of like invisible drag on people that slowly eats away at their relationship with others, their relationship with God. We just became so passionate about that. Um, and so Synchrony started, and we have basically, again, continued to live in chosen discomfort for that whole season.
Yeah.
So, like,
And now it wasn't even just discomfort at that point. It was also discomfort, and you were sacrificing your time away from the kids.
yeah, I mean, at some point during that early period, we made the choice for you to come home. So you became a stay-at-home parent. I was working a 40-hour week job. I was also starting to do, 10 to 20 hours a week of Synchrony work. When it got at its peak, probably, I was probably doing 25 hours a week of Synchrony stuff
Yeah.
and it was crazy. I
Yeah.
mean, I was a zombie. So the last few years have been really hard. And also joyous and also fulfilling and also amazing. But like really hard.
Yeah.
We've been living in a very tiny, very uncomfortable house that felt more tiny and more uncomfortable as our kids grew.
Yeah.
We did not have money to put towards it. We have not.
Which we were also running Synchrony out of our one little bedroom that was
Yeah.
like, so we had a we had a 3-2.
Uh-huh.
Our two kids were living in one of the rooms. We were living in the master, and then our storage room slash that we turned into an office.
Yeah. / podcast studio.
Yeah, was a storage room for all of our dry, non-perishable, like, or not,
Foods.
sorry, foods that went into the closet. And we also had your desk that you worked from every
Mhm.
day. And then we started adding podcasting equipment and a couch. And
Yeah.
it was, mind you, it was a 10 by 10 room.
So at various points, we started the podcast in the shed where we were doing laundry.
Yeah, laundry
which
shed.
was a windowless shed in the backyard where we had to turn off the air conditioner to podcast, and we would be like pouring sweat. We then moved it into our master bedroom for a little bit and had like installed like a drop down thing in our master
So
bedroom.
you didn't see our dirty laundry on the ground.
Yeah. And then we moved it into that study room with the little gray couch. And, again, God was like opening doors and blessing us in these little ways. I want to say this because I don't know if people know this. Like, so Synchrony started generating revenue the February after we started it, right? Or
March.
March after we started it. We moved from our beta testing process into a paid process.
We did the beta testing for like what, 8 months, 9 months, something like that.
We have never drawn consistent salary from Synchrony.
No, we've never drawn salary.
We've never drawn salary. We have done a couple of owner draws in order to like fund, you know, hey, we needed to go on this trip where we were speaking or something like that, or we needed to cover this expense because we were going to be traveling and you know, whatever. We have never drawn actual income from Synchrony.
No, the money that we pulled out was directly to help Synchrony that we couldn't use as tax write-offs.
Right. So Synchrony's funding has only ever supported Synchrony to this point.
Yeah.
And we've tried a lot of things, and you know, like we've spent that money on a lot of different things, like the podcasting equipment, like some travel to conferences, promotional stuff initially. We tried a lot of different avenues to see what would kind of help us connect with people the best way. The sync pins, shipping, you know, website stuff, giveaways, all kinds of different stuff. You guys have been here for that. But we've never drawn income from Synchrony. So we've, and we're okay with that in the sense that like we hoped eventually that it would become something that could sustain us so that we could do it full time.
Yeah.
And that was really what the hope that we were in going into the end of last year. So this episode ended up being way longer than we expected.
Ainty longer.
I'm sorry. We talk way too much.
Yep.
So we're going to split it into two. Sorry.
Yeah.
So we'll stop it here and then we'll pick right back up next time. We won't do an intro or anything. So we'll see you on the next episode.
See you on the flip side.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.